Good morning. I read Joshua 20 this morning, and it doesn't talk specifically about how God sees and punishes or doesn't punish our accidental sin, but it kind of does. So here's what it says. It's talking about people who accidentally kill someone. So it's manslaughter. It's not intentional. There's these cities of refuge that they're supposed to flee to. It says in verse 5. Well, let's go to verse 4. He shall flee to one of these cities and shall stand at the entrance of the gate of the city and explain his case to the elders of that city. They shall take him into the city and give him a place, and he shall remain with them. And if the avenger of blood pursues him, they shall not give up the manslayer into his hand, because he struck his neighbor unknowingly and did not hate him in the past. And he shall remain in that city until he has stood before the congregation for judgment, until the death of him who is the high priest at the time. Then the manslayer may return to his own town and his own home, to the town from which he fled. So the assumption is that he's telling the truth. So this is a person who accidentally killed someone. We call it manslaughter, right? So he's to flee to a city of refuge and stay there. They let him in because if he's telling the truth, he pleads his case, and if he's telling the truth, he goes in, he stays there, and he's safe. So that the person who is angry that he killed a relative of his, perhaps, can't come and kill him, can't take revenge on him. And that makes sense from a legal perspective. In today's society, we don't quite have the same things. I mean, I guess I'm not completely versed on all legal matters when it comes to manslaughter, but I think manslaughter itself is, there's a sentence for that, and maybe it's negligence or something like that. But like I said, I don't know all that. But let's just talk biblically for a second. In that, there was a way for a person to, I'm not saying that they should intentionally kill. I'm not saying that, but get away with murder. That wasn't their intention, of course. But there was a way for a person to accidentally kill someone and then not have a punishment for it. Now, we might say that the having to go away to a city was a type of punishment. It was like kind of an exile, but it wasn't supposed to be seen as a punishment. It was supposed to be seen as a refuge, staying alive, not being punished. So here's like I said, it's not talking specifically about how God sees our sin or punishes or doesn't punish our sin when we accidentally sin, but it kind of is, right? Like, here's what I wrote. At least here, there's no punishment for accidental sin. Indeed, instead, there's a refuge place. There's a refuge place. There's other places in the Bible that talk about offerings for accidental sin. So I'm not saying that there's no punishment or no atonement that's needed. Atonement is needed for accidental sin, and yet I think what God is saying here is that it's different, right? It's different. Like, when we intentionally sin, that's what we need forgiveness for. That's what we need punishment for. That's what we need discipline for, when we intentionally sin. And I'm not saying, obviously all sin needs to be atoned for. I'm not saying that, it's okay to just unintentionally sin all the time. Ignorance is bliss. But it's a very different level, right? Like, if you intentionally kill someone, you get the maximum sentence, right? If it's manslaughter, though, it's unintentional. Even our courts today would say it's a different ballgame. In this scenario, God is even saying that this person doesn't deserve, in the context of the Old Testament, the person would have been stoned to death, life for life, right? If it's unintentional, though, they deserve not death, but protection. Protection. And I think we're too quick to judge other people for unintentional sin. And we're sometimes too quick to condemn ourselves when we've made mistakes in the past. Whereas God looks at us and say, guys, it was a mistake. Yes, it was sin. Yes, but I'm going to protect you. I'm going to forgive you. I'm going to love you. I'm going to make sure that obviously there's consequences for sin, even natural consequences for sin, but God's going to sometimes even protect us from what we've done in the past out of ignorance. It's just, we find it fascinating that we so often, like almost like to flip that when it comes to sinning in the Bible, our sin or people's sin in the Bible. Not we, but I mean Christians in general, or maybe a certain subset of Christians, almost pretend like the only sins God ever forgives are the unintentional ones, and that there's no forgiveness for intentional sin, or no payment for intentional sin. Like nothing can be atoned for. Whereas it seems like this is saying the complete opposite of that. Like payment's required for intentional sin, and it doesn't seem like a payment is even required for an unintentional sin. Once again, not saying that there's no offerings. Obviously, there's offerings for unintentional sin. Old Testament talks about that. But when it comes to restitution and forgiveness and punishment and discipline, intentional sin is what we need those things for. I'm not saying we should go out and just intentionally sin. Obviously not. But the Bible is written because we've intentionally sinned. And it's the love story about how God still loves us, even though we've gone our own way, not just accidentally, but intentionally. Jesus came to die for our sins because we've blatantly refused his lordship. And he calls us to not just run to a refuge because we accidentally sinned, but to run to his refuge because we've spat upon him, spat upon his word, going our own way. One more thing about this. So let's say that this person it is found out that this person did intentionally kill the person, right? So say a person lied, went to this city of refuge and said, hey, I did it by accident, protect me from the avenger of blood. So they let him in, but then there's a trial. It talks about a trial, right? So he could stand before the congregation for judgment, right? So there would be a trial, and say he gets found out that he intentionally killed someone. So that's not what this place of refuge is for, and yet, that's what we all deserve, right? This is one scenario where somebody killed someone life for life, but the Bible, the Old Testament talks about the same punishment, stoning to death for all kinds of things, the one that pops into my head almost all the time is that it says that, there's two things. Picking up sticks on the Sabbath? Seriously? Working on the Sabbath. That deserves the death penalty, according to the Old Testament. And also disobeying your parents. Well, being a rebellious and stubborn child, I think is what it says. Not honoring your father and mother. That deserves, I know it's not right, but the death penalty, by our standards today, we would say, what in the world? But it makes perfect sense in the Old Testament. Because, see, it wasn't just about sinning intentionally, unintentionally. It's about the standard by which God judges us, which is a perfect standard. He's perfect. God is holy. God's perfect. And we can only be perfected as we rest in him. That's the point. The point isn't making ourselves perfect and whole. Yes, we want to follow Jesus. Yes, we want to walk with him and be sanctified as we walk with him. And that takes effort. But that's not really the point. The point is rest in Jesus. trust Him for both the forgiveness of intentional and unintentional sin, and be perfected in Him. And know that God's not done with you. No, no matter which way it is, accidental, intentional, God's not done with you. Um, I know He's not done with me. God bless you. We'll see you again tomorrow.